Mm. Hello, everybody. Give me a 5-5 if you can hear me. Hi, Rita. Mm. Hello, everybody. Nice, 13. Waiting on Doug. It's hot in California. It's hot and steamy today here in SoCal. You know, when we have a Mediterranean climate, so generally really dry, warm. Last couple weeks have been fantastic, but when we get any of the storms coming up from the Gulf, and we get a little bit of humidity, it's like it's unbearable. I know our humidity here is probably nothing compared to somebody like Florida on a daily basis. But man, when you're acclimated to dry weather and you get just a little bit of humidity, it is miserable. Yeah. I'll be in AZ tomorrow. I'm actually driving over. Got to head up to Prescott. Oh, we don't have much smoke here, Kathy. For some odd reason, I don't know why. I smelled a little bit of it yesterday, but I haven't had much smoke. I'm fortunate. I have we don't have central heating and air in this house, but we generally use swamp coolers. But I use we have window air conditioning units for several of the rooms, so we can close something off and go inside and stay cool. Doug might experience a little bit of smoke where he is. I know. I'm wondering, Doug, are you going to be able to get to your class tonight? Do they have the Ortega closed?
I'll go around to the 76 then.
Is not even being stopped this investigation.
The because of the fire down there. Isn't the fire down kind of right around the edge of San Clemente?
I don't know. I didn't know there was a fire. This is news to me.
Didn't?
Yeah. I was in Fallbrook just now.
Maybe they got it out. There was a fire down there right there off of the 74, close to the 74 yesterday.
Okay. Now where I'm going now, they moved the class again in that area to Camino Capistrano and San Juan Capistrano because someone got offended by us doing the Pledge of Allegiance in public at the other restaurant. So now this is the second time we've had to leave a restaurant because some libtard got offended.
Well, what makes me angry is them even entertaining the idea that they're going to allow or they're going to try to pacify somebody who's offended.
Well, in the case of this restaurant, it's a longtime patron who visits the restaurant often. I'm like, yeah, but you're going So you're shooing off 27 other patrons who are buying meals, by the way, every time I do the class.
Right.
Because this one person was offended.
Well, they get what they deserve.
Yeah, so my class is like, so my class Fallbrook's like, okay, so what's the name of these restaurants so I know not to go there?
There were Joanne, there were a couple of fires in Southern California. They weren't very big, but most of the big fires are up in NorCal right now. So SoCal has had their share in the past. We just don't have it right now. Southern California typically gets the majority of their fires in the fall, when we get the Santa Ana winds, where the warm winds that are coming from the east blowing out, it gets really, really bad. But anyway.
Yeah, I remember one year there was so much fire going on that cars were literally bursting into flame going up Cajon Pass. Remember that one?
I don't remember that, but that sounds right.
Yeah, there was like traffic was stopped because it was like rush hour, and cars were lighting on fire in traffic because the flames were right up against the freeway. You don't remember that?
I don't remember that. No.
I was driving a big rig at the time, and I remember that same year along the 15 up there by Rancho, California, a big rig on the side of the road on fire because his trailer had caught fire because the fire was so close to the freeway. And then the winds were so high that there was also a couple of trucks that had blown over on their side.
I remember some of the fires up north where you know, houses and cars were literally melted and they were next to a tree that hadn't been touched. But that's a topic for another day.
I was talking to my a cousin of mine the other day, and another cousin who I haven't seen since a kid lived in Paradise. That whole town who burned up a couple of years ago. So he's now living in Newport Beach, but so away from the fires and closer to the ocean.
Tracy's on time today.
Tracy?
Somebody in the comment section.
All right. Well, we'll get started whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. Let's rock and roll, man. It's 3 o'clock.
What are we doing chatting for?
3:02. Let's get her done.
Let's get her done. Yeah, if I remember properly, we got through, and you were surprised, amendments 3 through 8 last week, right?
Yes, sir. We got through number 8. So we are now on to number 9. I think you said today we're going to try to get through 12.
I'd like to. 9 and 10 for sure, 11 and 12 preferably, which would put us into the Civil War, war between the states next week.
The war of northern aggression.
Yeah, the war of northern aggression.
the war to prevent Southern independence.
Yeah, well, there's more to it even than that. Some would even say the bankers' war.
Yeah.
Trust me. Now everybody in the chat room is going, can we do that this week? That sounds good.
I will tell you guys that a lot of things you think you know about the Civil War, you don't.
Well, you know, and we've talked about this before. A lot of history is just a lie. You got to go back to original documents. What they're teaching us is such junk. You got to go back to the stuff from the time to figure it out and piece it together. It's just an amazing thing. But anyway, it's good to see you guys.
Think about this, Doug. They've been lying to us for everything for the last 50, 60, 70 years. What makes you think they haven't been lying about stuff before that?
Exactly. And well, one of the questions at the Fallbrook class this morning was, well, when did this all start, Doug? And I said, well, on a worldwide scale, it all began with a serpent. So,
all right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend.
Good to see everybody. I skidded in. I was on time, but barely. I was taken out to lunch by a bunch of the students afterwards. I left with 50 minutes to spare for a trip that normally takes 30 minutes. And I got in the nick of time. Traffic's rough out there right now. But this is Southern California. So those of you who don't live in Southern California, I'm sure you have traffic, but you don't know traffic till you've been here. Now I'll take that back. There are places where I've been in pretty bad traffic. How people drive around in Memphis and New York City. See, that's the reason why New Yorkers are always angry. They have to drive in that stuff. But or be a
No,
pedestrian.
no. I'm gonna beg to differ. The New York cabbies have to drive in that, but see, if you live in New York, you can take a subway, or I mean, there's alternative modes of transportation. You don't. You're not
All I know is
forced to
I've been there
drive.
once, and that was enough for me.
Yeah, basically.
We good to see it. Yeah, Memphis has so many one-way streets and alleys that you know, if you don't hit your spot immediately, you got to go outside the city and try again. That's a crazy city to drive in. At Washington D.C. is another one. But anyway, welcome to the program. We are working our way through the Constitution, and we are on amendments 9 and 10. We are, it's funny because those first 7 articles take a long time to get through, but once you get to the amendments, it seems like it picks up. And when we get to the final dozen amendments, it gets really fast. But here we are. We're in amendments 9 and 10 first. So amendment 9, let's back up. Let's talk about rights. And when we talk about our rights, and we're really good about demanding our rights and expecting our rights and so on and so forth, and we use that word all the time as citizens, as individuals, as Americans. And the problem is we often don't understand our rights, and that's where I get what's the word, frustrated, because we have bought the definition of our rights that they've given us. And when I say they, you know who they are. The they out there, whoever they are. And so I want to go over and I know I've done this, and I'm writing at the same time. There we go. I know I've gone through this before, but I really want to go over it again because I want you to fully understand our rights, your rights, my rights, even Ron's rights. Even Ron has rights. I know that they're giving them to anybody nowadays. No, actually, God gave us all our rights. Every single person on this planet. And when I get into this, there's some people, their heads explode. Our rights are God-given. That means every human being, just by virtue of being born, possesses those rights. That's a tough one to stomach and to really digest, because we know that were the people in Nazi Germany, did they have rights? Did the people in communist China have rights? Did the people in Soviet Union have rights? Yes. Everybody has the same rights. The question is not whether or not you have your rights, whether or not government has blocked your access to your rights, has made it so that you cannot partake of your rights or practice your rights. Your rights belong to you, and everybody has those rights. My truck remains in my possession. In other words, I still own it, even if it's not in my possession. It gets stolen. It doesn't stop being mine. From an objective point of view, it may look like somebody else has it, but it's really subjectively, it's still mine. Your rights still belong to you, no matter what, whether you have access to them or not. Why? God gave them to you. And God is a higher power than government. Now, the founders didn't use the word God, they used the word creator. And I think that's an appropriate word, because not everybody believes in God in the same way. So your rights are natural rights. You naturally have them. For those of you who are like, yeah, what if I don't believe in God? Fine, you naturally have them. But nonetheless, they belong to you. They're yours. But now our rights don't work the way they've explained it to us. When I say they, I mean the government, I need the political class, the legal class, the philosophers, and all the other idiots out there who think that you need a ruling elite. Your rights belong to you, and there are 2 rights that are yours no matter what. They have no authority whatsoever to even breathe sideways at those rights. Life and liberty. Liberty means free will, freedom of choice, to operate for one's individual interests. Liberty. Life, liberty, and in the Declaration of Independence, it says life, liberty, and if those of you who are Americans continued, as I said that, you filled in the blank. You said pursuit of happiness. Everybody always does. Everybody knows that's what it says. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You do not have the right to be happy. I know that's kind of a sad thing. You don't have a right to be happy, but you do have a right to pursue it. You have a right to pursue the things that you believe make you happy. And if you're going to pursue it, then what's government's job? To force everybody to give it to you? No. To get out of the way and remove obstacles so that you may pursue it freely. Pursuit of happiness. So let's now fill in the blank a little bit. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You don't have a right to education, but you do have a right to pursue it. You don't have a right to health care, but you do have a right to pursue it. You don't have a right to have a cake baked exactly the way you want, but you do have the right to pursue it. And government's job is to remove the obstacle so that you may pursue it, not to coerce some baker to make it the way you want, but to remove the obstacle so that you have the options available to you. In other words, not to tell a baker that they can't bake that kind of cake. So I go to this baker and they say, well, you know what? I have a right that kind of is violated by that. So I don't want to make your cake. Well, my right stops at the edge of your right. So, okay, I'll go to a different baker. No problem. I'm pursuing my happiness. So I will pursue it everywhere I can until I am able to gratify that pursuance. But in the process, we have to be responsible with our rights, because our rights stop at the next person's rights. You have the right to go to an intersection, but your right to go through an intersection ends at the edge of the next guy's bumper, because he has a right not to be run into. So we have stoplights so that we don't run into each other. That's not taking away our rights. That's making sure we have an orderly society. So some laws are necessary. We do need government. As much as I hate to say it, it's a necessary evil. I have a right to swing my arms. I can swing my arms all day if I want. Hey man, if that's my thing, why not? So I'm swing my arms. And as I get closer to Ron there and my fist starts swinging a little closer to his nose, guess what? He has a right not to be punched in the face. So my right to swing my arm stops at the tip of his nose. My right cannot interfere with his right. So therefore, I need to be responsible with my right. And if I do decide to punch him in the nose by swinging my arms, now his right has been betrayed and offended and breached and everything else. And so he can go to government and say, hey, this guy stomped all over my rights. Say, buddy, you can pursue your right to swing your arms, but you can't do it into somebody's nose. All right, fine. I'll pursue my right elsewhere. That's what should have been the answer when it came to the cake baking thing. Hey, they punched me in the nose with their request to bake the cake they wanted. Your right to pursue your cake stops at the edge of that guy's religious rights. So pursue your right in another place. Go ahead and pursue it. It's okay. You pursue your right to have the cake baked exactly the way you want, but pursue it elsewhere. Don't pursue it in a manner that stomps on somebody else's rights. Swing your arms elsewhere. Don't punch him in the nose. All right. So that's how your rights work. I want you to understand that. So your rights are more than just things. Well, I have a right to property and I have a right to, a gun, and I have a right to this. Well, yeah, that's true. You have a right to pursue those things, but it goes deeper than that. Your rights is your liberty, and your liberty is your free will. But once again, our free will has limitations from a godly point of view. And I don't want government putting limitations that are unnecessary, but government should be involved when it comes down to the rule of law. And the rule of law, God's law, natural law, whatever you want to call it, says that it's not right for me to go around punching people in the face. Getting back to my right to swing my arms. So I got to be responsible. And there's going to be laws in place and so on and so forth. That's our rights. So now we have a federal government that's being created. And the founding fathers say, you know what? Our biggest problem with a centralized government is central governments love to stomp all over rights. So thank you, people who wrote the Constitution. We appreciate it, but we're not signing that Constitution. We're not ratifying it. We want nothing to do with it unless we get a Bill of Rights. We want to tell the government specifically, by the way, do not touch our rights. So the Bill of Rights is written. First Amendment, Congress shall make no law regarding your religion, your speech, your press, your association with others, and your right to petition the government for redress grievances. Your right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You have a right not to have soldiers quartered in your home. You have a right, legal rights, when it comes to search and seizure, when it comes to trials, when it comes to how you're treated based on the due process of law, and when it comes down to excessive fines or cruel and unusual punishments. You have those rights, and they are listed in the Bill of Rights. The federal government is being told, oh, by the way, look, we're going to name these rights, don't touch. But what we've realized is your rights are indefinite. Your rights is such a long list, there's no way they could have listed all of them. You think Obamacare was long. Your list of rights is longer and deeper and more extensive than any law any man has ever made. Your rights go on forever. So they couldn't list them all. So in the Ninth Amendment, realizing that, because they'd gotten over 100 requests from the states on the Bill of Rights, proposals, said, man, we can't put them all. Already got 8 amendments here. And actually, at this point, we had 10. 2 of them didn't get ratified. So, we got to do something about this. There's too many. We can't put it all. So the Ninth Amendment says the enumeration or the listing in the Constitution of certain rights, in other words, the ones that are listed, shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Retained by the people. Why? We owned them in the first place. It's saying, in a sense, if a right is not listed in the Constitution, you can't stomp on that right either, government. You must treat it no different than the other rights. Now, that does not mean to protect and guarantee. That means to secure. We've gone over that before. I want to do it one more time in a short version. Twice in our founding documents, the word secure is used. In the preamble, it says to secure the blessings of liberty. What are the blessings of liberty? The blessings come from God. Liberty is your freedoms, your free will, your rights. So to secure the blessings of liberty. And then in the Declaration of Independence, it says life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. So the government's job, their primary job, is to secure your rights. What does that mean? Oh, they're there to protect our rights. That's not what I said. Who's the greatest threat against your rights? Government. They are the most dangerous and most likely entity to go against your rights. Therefore, they're not there to protect your rights. Why would I want the person who's the threat to be the protector? And the way I like to do it, just to give someone a visual, is to go back to the Roman Empire. And as the Roman Empire is becoming an empire, and the Roman troops went from being guardians of the Republic to soldiers of the empire that were being used against the people, then that would be like that Roman soldier jumping up in front of you, holding up a shield and saying, don't worry, I'll protect you against me. Well, that's nuts, right? They're the threat. Government is a threat. They're not there to protect your rights. They're the threat to your rights. And when it comes to protecting your rights, they think that they're also supposed to then guarantee your rights. If they're there to protect them, they got to guarantee. They got to make sure you got it. Well, if that was a proper definition, it would apply to all rights. So they're going to guarantee your education, and they're going to guarantee your health care, and they're going to guarantee you get that kickback exactly the way you want. And they're going to guarantee your guns. Wait a second. They don't apply it to guns, do they? Therefore, it's not a proper definition. It either applies to all of our rights or it doesn't. So government is not there to protect your rights. They're not there to guarantee your rights, because your rights existed before they did. Your rights are in place because of a higher power, a power higher than the government, that even the government must answer to. They are not at the top of the food chain. God is. The Creator is. Or for those of you who don't want to admit there's a creator, nature is. But nonetheless, those are natural rights that belong to you. They're naturally yours. And Amendment 9 says, yeah, we've listed some rights in this Constitution, but there's a bunch that aren't listed. Matter of fact, most of them are not listed. You can't touch those either. None of your business, out of the way. Your job is to clear the path for me to pursue my rights, to make sure all the weeds and all of the thorns and all the thickets are cleared out of the way, and that your butt is out of the way so I can pursue my rights. Stay out of the way, get out of the way, let me pursue my rights. And if somebody else wants to interfere with me pursuing my rights, then the legal system get involved to make sure they get out of the way so I can pursue my rights. But nonetheless, they're my rights to pursue, not yours to give. So that's the 9th Amendment. 10th Amendment. 10th Amendment is one of the most important piece clauses in this entire Constitution. It's one of the shortest clauses as well. Doesn't say a whole lot, but it says a lot in those few words. Now, Amendments 1 through 3 are your personal rights: religion, speech, press, assembly, petition, guns, quartering. Amendments 4 through 8 are your legal rights: search and seizure, eminent domain, trial by jury, don't have to be a witness against yourself, right to have a counsel present, no excessive or cruel, unusual, all that legal rights. 9 is all other rights. 10 is states' rights. Talk about the states, like you, have rights. And I know I say states' rights, and the people on the left, they get triggered by a word that they don't like using, trigger, and they get all triggered. Oh no, whoa, states' rights, that's racist. Because the people who claim that the war between the states wasn't about slavery say it was about states' rights. That's actually very racist. So if it's states' rights, if that's what the southern states wanted, well then if you say states' rights, that's racism. That's what I'm told all the time. I hear it a lot. No, states' rights, the states are an individual, sovereign individual, just like you are. And except for the authorities given to the federal government, the states have authority over their own stuff, just like you have authority over your own stuff. There are certain things the states can't do. Once again, laws are necessary. Sometimes there are certain things we want in place. But for the most part, the states possess most of, if not almost all, the authorities. So here, the 10th Amendment, though, is going to help us understand something. How do we know if it's a federal authority or a state authority? How do we know if a state has a right over something or they don't? How do we know? How is the Constitution constructed so that we know these things? So the 10th Amendment reads as follows. The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution. Powers delegated by the Constitution. Boy, that's interesting. In other words, federal government doesn't make up their own powers. They don't make that. They're not supposed to make that decision. They are, but they're not supposed to. The powers are not given to them by judges. The powers are not given to them by precedent. The government is not given to them by, well, they just know they need to do it. They're delegated to them by the Constitution. If the power is not listed in the Constitution, it's not a power of theirs. The power is not delegated to the United States in the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states. So it's saying if there's a power that's not given to the federal government and the states are told they can't do it, they are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Then there's a state power. So if someone says, well, Doug, what if something's not in the Constitution? Does it mean the founding fathers didn't understand? They didn't see it coming, aviation or whatever? No. If something's not in the Constitution, it says, it is saying it's a state power. Because like you and I, the rights that belong to the states is a very long list. We're not going to sit here and name them all. We're going to say, and the authorities that the federal government have, they're granted. They're in the Constitution. They're listed. The things that the states can't do, they're listed. Everything else belongs to the states. It's state authority. So now this brings up an example, a video I just did, matter of fact, recently, and I know it's a big question for people, and I might even get Ron talking here. I'm proud of Ron, man. He's been a sponge all afternoon so far. And I love you, brother. I absolutely love you. You come up a conversation often, by the way, because I respect you so much. But
Thank you.
so recently I got an email from a woman named Carol, and she comes to one of my live Constitution classes. I get emails from you guys too, and I'm way behind on emails. So if you haven't gotten a response yet, I'm working on it. But anyway, so I did a video based on her request, and here's what it said. Hey, Doug, I heard that the federal government, the Department of Justice, is threatening people with a 1-year jail time and or a fine if they're involved in an election audit, saying that it violates federal law. Is that constitutional? Well, the federal government authority part is very easy. Is election audits, the idea of an election audit, mentioned anywhere in the Constitution as an authority to the federal government? No. Therefore, federal government has no authority. So therefore, any law or any burp, any cough by the federal government about election audits is unconstitutional. None of their business. They have no authority. Then it says in the 10th Amendment, nor prohibited by it to the states. Is there a place anywhere in the Constitution where it prohibits the states from holding an election audit? The answer is no. Therefore, it's a state authority. Therefore, the states can do it all they want. The states not only have the right to hold an election audit, they have the duty and the obligation. It is their right, though. It is a right. Just like you have the right to pursue your happiness, they have a right to pursue election audits, according to the 10th Amendment, because the federal government's not given the authority and the states are not told they can't.
So
I knew this would stir up a question. Go ahead.
Who runs the election? Does the federal government run the federal election?
Well, that's a good question. Let's ask the Constitution. Since we're in a Constitution class, that's a good place to start. Article 1, Section 4 is the place I would like you to go if you're following along at home, keeping score on your score pad. I'm a baseball guy. Sorry.
I'm a baseball guy too.
Yeah. So you're like me. You're one of the guys in the stands. It's not just watching the game. You got a score pad and you're marking each thing.
I don't like to go to the games with people because I like to watch the game. If I'm paying the money to go to the stadium, I want to watch the game. I don't want to sit and have a conversation.
Exactly. I'm the same way.
I want to watch the game.
You and I are going to games together because you seem to be the only person that's willing to go to the game to watch a game. My wife drives me nuts.
Yeah. It's like a social event. No, I'm here to watch the game.
Oh, I love to talk. And you know what? In between innings,
exactly.
I'll talk. 7th inning stretch after I'm done singing, I'll talk.
Exactly.
But while the game's going on,
I'm watching the game.
Pardon my language, but shut the F up. I want to watch the game. My wife does the same thing with movies. It's like last night I get home. She says, "Will you watch a movie with me?" Sure. So I start a movie and then she starts talking. So I pause the movie. You want to have a conversation? You want to watch a movie? Oh, I could do both. No, you can't. I want to watch a movie. Either talk or watch a movie. Don't do both. She got all like hurt about it. I'm like, yeah, I'm the same way at games. But anyway, okay. So Article 1, Section 4, page 3 of this particular pocket Constitution. If I can get it to show, there we go. If you got one. The times, places, and manners of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state to the legislature thereof. State legislatures handle elections. But notice it says senators and representatives. It doesn't say anything about presidential election, does it?
No.
Because the presidential election is through the electors, not the people of it originally. When we get back to Article 2, we'll talk more about that. For those of you who missed it, I don't know if we're going to go back through it again here or how we're going to do it. But
absolutely, we'll this will just be perpetual.
Yeah, but then it says, but the Congress may at any time make law or make by law. But the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, except as to the places of choosing senators. So in other words, if the rules that the states have are really tyrannical and nutty, then Congress can make a law to correct it. That was the original intent anyway. That's the clause that they were trying to use for HR 1, by the way.
Hmm.
And the thing is, it was never intended to be federalized. First of all. Second of all, the part in HR 1 all about the presidential election, totally unconstitutional. This says senators and representatives. There is nothing in the Constitution anywhere that says that Congress can have even a peep about the presidential election. None of their business. Now, so if states handle the elections, the states can handle the audits. None of the federal government's business. The federal government's outside. In fact, what I think should happen, and this will never happen. This is the way I think it should be. The states hold their audits. The states come to conclusions. It's a BS election, and then the states send their law enforcement officials to Washington, D.C. to escort the idiots out of office. I would love to see county sheriffs and state police from the different states all converge upon Washington, D.C. Forget the military, man. Let's get the law enforcement, top law enforcement of every state all showing up at once like it's a military force and saying, Biden, Harris, and let's see, we got a long list of Democrat names here that are in Congress. You are hereby required to vacate office and we will escort you off the property.
Democrat, you're forgetting some of the Republicans.
Not in this election, I don't think. Maybe. I'm not saying I love the Republicans. Trust me, my congressman, Ken Calvert, and people say, well, Doug, he's a good Republican. That's not necessarily reassuring.
No, it's not.
So I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
A large section of the problems that we are dealing with now have to do with rhinos.
That's true. But that said, when it comes to the scale of douchebaggery, the scale on douchebaggery of Democrats is like off the scale.
And I'm going to respectfully disagree, because I would say that the people who are pretending to be Republicans, calling themselves Republicans, running on a Republican ticket and get there and do the exact same thing as the Democrats, but well,
deep down they're Democrats too. They just call themselves Republicans.
I understand that, but I would, at least with the Democrats, you know what you're getting.
Yeah, so true. But
I would
the
say
other
the
thing
level
is,
of douchebaggery would be much worse on the Republicans.
Well, the reason why I think the douchebaggery is worse on the Democrats is because they're all douchebags.
You understand what, but you understand.
In the Republican Party, at least there's a handful of them that aren't douchebags.
This is true.
A handful.
This is true. Very few. Very few.
The unfortunate thing is the number of Republicans in Congress that are not douchebags is about equal to the number of Republicans that are in the California legislature, period.
All right. Right.
And then of the ones in Sacramento, there's only 3 or 4 that might. Anyway.
Oh, right. Get you. I get you.
Well, let me use James Madison's words. This is a problem with factions, not party as much, but factions. Because see, if you're talking parties, you got Republican, you got Democrat. If you're talking factions, you've got those who are against the Constitution. You got those that support the Constitution. The factions. This is a factional problem, and so the douchebaggery then really runs high in the faction of people who do not respect this document and do not follow this document, are not willing to adhere to this document and consider it an obstacle. All right.
That's why I call it the establishment.
Yeah, that's what I call it too. And I have a friend who used to get on to me all the time about that. He was conservative Christian, but he didn't like the word establishment because he didn't want to believe that the douchebaggery was going on within the Republican Party also, number one. And number two, he believed a lot of what the establishment said. And why would you call them the establishment though? It's the Republicans are the good guys. I said, well, okay.
He had faith.
Yeah. Well, he believed in the party before he did the Constitution. And then when Trump came along, guess what he became? An anti-Trumper, a never-Trumper. He still is to this day.
Wow. Next.
We're not, lo and behold, we're not friends anymore. Okay. Amendment 10. So that's Amendment 10. Amendment 11. Let me ask you a question, audience. It's rhetorical. You don't have to answer. Haven't you ever wished that something could be done just to slap the courts down real good, just slap them so hard their heads spin. In matter of fact, even take away some of the court's powers. Wouldn't you love something like that? It happened in the 11th Amendment. Now understand the 11th Amendment, and you've not heard me say this before because this is information that I have come across since I think you've heard me talk about it. The 11th Amendment was originally supposed to be proposed by a Article 5 convention, or what today some people might call a convention of states. The states were getting together saying, we're going to put the 11th Amendment in place. Well, they didn't call it that yet, but that we want to propose this amendment. And then Congress, realizing what was going on, beat them to the punch and proposed it themselves. So if ever you are asked, was there ever been a convention of states? No. Well, yeah, but there almost was for the 11th Amendment. Now, that said, there was a lawsuit that went on down in Georgia. And what had happened was, and it's in the handout, and I don't have it in front of me, so I can't remember the name of the lawsuit, something v. Georgia. But what was going on at the time was Georgia and a manufacturer of something from another state had gotten into a dispute. So went to the courts, and Georgia said, well, you know what? This is not a federal issue. This is a state issue. And based on our state sovereignty, we're not even going to attend this because it's an illegal case. Federal government's got no business being involved here. So based on our state sovereignty, we're not even going to participate. And the federal judge said, in this case, Georgia, you don't have sovereignty. Now, the founding fathers are still alive at this time. And that upset a lot of people. Really? The state doesn't have sovereignty? How dare you, courts? In fact, why are you even taking this case? This should have been resolved at a different level because it's not even a federal issue. So the 11th Amendment takes away the authority of the courts taking cases of this manner. Let's read it and I'll show you what I mean. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of a foreign state. So in other words, for example, just to bring it home for you, Arizona had that immigration law. Remember years ago that the federal government sued them over?
870.
According to this, the federal courts cannot take a case in which the citizens of California, let's say a group of people from California sued the state of Arizona. The citizens of a different state cannot sue a different state. Well, they can, but they can't do it through the federal courts. Federal courts can't take the case. So now, if that's the case, and let's say, La Raza of California wanted to sue Arizona over that immigration law, then how would they do it? It would have to be through the state courts. So it'd have to be filed in Arizona. And what's nice about it is it better be a pretty good case because a lawsuit by some group out of state filed in a state against the state is likely not going to succeed. It better be a pretty good case. Those frivolous suits aren't going to go anywhere because the state court is going to stand typically.
The jurisdiction has to be in the state that's being sued.
Right.
California can't sue Arizona in a California court.
Right. Or they could not file it in a California court. and it's not California, but it'd be citizens of California, not necessarily California itself. If California sued Arizona, the state sued the state, that could be done, but they would have to go straight to the Supreme Court. That's a whole different case, because in that case, the Supreme Court would have original jurisdiction. But anyway, so the federal courts,
actually, I'm glad you said that because I was under the impression that's what the 11th was covering.
No, it's about citizens of another state.
So a state can sue a state.
Yeah, but that would go to straight to the Supreme Court. But citizens of a state to sue a state, that would have to go through the state courts. Federal courts couldn't even take it.
Gotcha.
All right, now the 12th Amendment, the long one, and we still got 20 minutes, so we're good. Let me give you a little background on the 12th Amendment. the election of 1800 was almost a farce. It was bad. Thomas Jefferson was running for president. Adams was running for re-election. Aaron Burr was running for president, among other people. And by the time all of the electoral votes were counted, nobody got a majority of the electoral votes. Today, they say you got to reach 270 to win, right? 270 to win, or whatever the number was back then, nobody got it. So it went to the House of Representatives. And nobody got a majority there either. 36 times.
Oh, wow.
36 times they voted, nobody got a majority. On the 37th vote, Congressman Lyons, Lyons, you can look it up, who had been in jail because of a law that John Adams had signed, Alien and Sedition Act. Basically, he's put in jail for speaking out against the Adams administration. You talk about an unconstitutional law. Boy, you thought they're nuts now. He had been thrown in jail. He got released after the 36th vote, took a seat in Congress, didn't vote for Adams, that's for sure, or anybody that was associated with the Federalist Party. He voted for Jefferson. Now back then, it was based on the state. His state, what that did is his vote in his state pushed his state to vote for Jefferson, giving Jefferson that one vote that put him over the majority. Jefferson won the presidency of 1800 by one vote, in other words. And the founders are like, the people that are still around are looking at this thing, so whoa, that was a mess. Nobody knew what was going on, how we're supposed to proceed. We need more details, number one. Number two, Jefferson had been the vice president of Adams, and they became staunch enemies. The way the elections were going on, members of opposing parties would always wind up being president and vice president. That's dangerous too. So we're going to change everything. So they wrote the 12th Amendment to change everything. And let's go through it bit by bit, piece by piece. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. In other words, if let's say you're an elector from New York and there's two candidates from New York, you can't vote for both of them. At least you're voting for two candidates, at least one has to be from a state other than your own. This was to keep the states that had the most electors, the states with the largest populations, from just voting in their people. Because they knew that tyranny rises out of population centers. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and in distinct ballots the person voted for as vice president. So one's for president, one's for vice president. Once again, one of them has to be from a state not their own. And they shall make distinct list of all persons voted for as president, and of all persons voted for vice president, and of the number of votes of each, which list shall sign and certify, excuse me, and transmit, sealed to the seat of government in the United States, directed to the president of the Senate. Who's the president of the Senate?
Vice president.
Vice president of the United States. Thank you. While I was drinking water.
When did they, I don't, if I'm jumping ahead of the gun, let me know. When did they go to the system where the nominee of the party got to select his running mate?
Technically, that's not how it's done. That's the way they make it look. There's two separate elections, and the vice president still has to be elected by the electors. And if they disagree with the president's pick, they can actually put someone else in.
Really?
Most people don't know that.
I didn't know that.
The person
So
chooses who they want their running mate to be, but it's still a separate election. It's not one election. You're not voting for president and vice president together, or at least electors are not supposed to. There are two separate elections. Typically, though, and so far every time, the chosen vice president has been the guy to get it along with that presidential candidate, but they don't have to.
So how do the
So let's say, for example, the electors say, well, you know what? When they voted for their election, I don't like the guy that guy chose. So while I'm going to vote for candidate A for president, I'm going to vote for candidate Q. I wonder why I chose that letter. Q for vice
No,
president,
no. Let's use
rather than
no,
vice
no.
president
Let's-
A,
let's-
who
let's-
goes along with that president.
let's use the 2020 election for an example.
Okay.
Theoretically speaking, the electors didn't like Mike Pence, but they liked Kamala Harris. Would it have been possible for them to elect Donald Trump as president and Kamala, or Joe Biden as president and Mike Pence as vice president?
Yes. Based
Okay.
on the rules, yes, they can do that. They can. Just because they can doesn't mean they will, but they can.
Huh.
Two separate elections.
I never knew that. And so right now, I thought that at some point they merged.
Hey, if I'm
the two.
teaching Ron something, man, I've accomplished
Ah,
something.
wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, they're two separate elections. It's not one election.
Interesting.
All right, let's continue.
I learned something.
Oh, I love it when I could teach him some stuff. All right. President of the Senate. Now remember, this is the 12th Amendment. Some of the stuff has been altered by the 25th Amendment, but what we've read so far is still in place. The president of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House Representatives, open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. So remember when Pence was, okay, that's this.
So Sue just asked a question. When Pence said Trump picked him and he never did, then Pence was elected illegally. I don't understand that question.
No, that's not it at all. I don't understand the question. Pence wasn't elected illegally. Pence
Yeah,
was
I don't
elected
know.
by the electors.
Yeah.
Now, the fact that Trump chose him is why the electors probably voted for him.
Right.
But they could have theoretically, well, not theoretically, constitutionally, have voted in somebody else. If the electors didn't like Pence and enough of them voted for somebody else, they could have given Trump a totally different vice president. They could have. But the electors today tend to abide by how the people voted and tend to abide by the running mate that the president wanted.
Well, okay. So that, if that's the case, when did the president, during the presidential election process, at what point did they begin to select a running mate before the election?
Right around the 1820s.
Okay.
And the reason why is because in 1828, which is the year that Andrew Jackson was elected president, he had convinced the Electoral College to change how they do it. And so they started picking running mates to appeal to the people as a team. Prior to the change that was kind of encouraged by Andrew Jackson, where the people started voting, the electors voted independently of the people. The people didn't vote for president. The state legislatures appointed the electors, and the electors then would vote based on what they thought that their legislature wanted, what they thought was the best person, and also how they were influenced by the people who were campaigning for the candidates.
There's a lot of questions in the chat right now about Pence. Okay. The way I understand it,
Pence
is
was elected
Pence-
legally. It was a separate election. The electors chose him because Trump chose him.
Trump
They
chose
didn't have to.
Pence. Trump chose Pence to be his running mate in 2016.
Right.
So now, whether it was the party that picked him, or I have a hard time believing that the party picked Trump in contradiction of what Trump wanted. But whatever. Trump selected Pence as his running mate.
And the electors then followed suit and decided to vote for him. They
And
didn't have to.
Gloria, you may be correct, and you may be correct. But if that is correct about the deep state picking Pence, then it is possible that Trump went along with that because that was part of the plan. I don't know what to tell you guys. I don't. But as far as I know, Trump was the one that selected Pence, and in the public view. I have never heard anything contrary to that. But anyway, I'm looking at the comments, and people are like, but Trump didn't pick Pence.
Now, I'm going to get back to Pence here on something because we just read something very important. So the president of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives, open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be present, if such a number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. And I'm gonna stop right there. The role of the president of the Senate, the vice president of the United States, when the electoral votes are being presented, is to be the guy who's wielding the gavel when it's time to count the votes, but it's only for the purpose of counting the votes. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that the Senate or the vice president of the United States certifies those electoral votes. Now, and I might even get in some hot water with a few people. I'm talking from a constitutional standpoint now. Pence, in his role of president of the Senate, could not say these electoral votes are unacceptable. We refuse to take them. He did not have that authority, and he said so. A lot of people are mad at Pence because they said on January 6th, he betrayed the president by accepting the electoral votes. He didn't have a choice. That's what was given to him. His job was to count them. I just ran out of water. His job was to count the votes. That's it. The role of certifying and calling them back if necessary belongs to the state legislatures. Now, that said, Pence, knowing that a lot of these electoral votes were questionable, could have said something. Hey, it is my opinion as president of the Senate that these electoral votes may not be valid. And I want to give the opportunity to the states to recall them if they would like to. He could have done that. But the role of decertifying them or sending them back to the states, he did not have that authority. I've got an awful lot of Republicans and conservatives and Trumpsters angry with me over that. Oh, it's all Trump's fault. If he hadn't betrayed Trump on January 6th, he didn't betray Trump. He followed the Constitution. And he said that's what he was doing. He said in a public statement, I don't have that kind of constitutional authority. His role was to count the votes, the electoral votes, nothing else.
Well, it's funny talking about constitutional, what is supposed to, what the constitutional roles are.
Right.
I always, as a question to people, I'll say, what was the constitutional role of the president in the legislative process? Nobody knows the answer to that question. But when I tell them,
what do you mean in the legislative process of what?
What is the constitutional role of the president during the legislative process? The president is not supposed to approve or disapprove of legislation based on his desires or wanting it to pass. It's supposed to approve or disapprove it based on its constitutionality.
Right. And his only role is to sign it or not sign it, depending. And typically, historically, that decision was only made based on constitutionality, not as political opinion.
Right, and people say, but what's the role of the Supreme Court is to determine whether laws are passed or constitutional. No, that role is supposed to be the president's because he is the executive and he's supposed to ensure that any law that's passed is constitutional. People don't know that.
In fact, and I off the top of my head, I want to say Polk, but I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Pierce, the first president to face the possibility of articles of impeachment. It was because they were upset because he kept vetoing bills based on his political opinion, and they felt that that was outside his role. That his role was, if he was the veto, was only supposed to be over constitutionality.
Let me say something here because the chat's still going crazy about Pence, guys. We're using the Pence example as something to just as a way to discuss. Well, I don't want to get into the weeds about whether Pence was Trump's pick or not, but there was a question in here. Somebody asked. So D asked. So the people, when voting, filled in the bubble for Pence. And I think what she means there is is if there's two separate, did you hear that, Doug?
No, I didn't. I was
Okay,
grabbing the
so,
water. I found the water in my
Uh,
office.
I saw you putting your earbud in. Okay, so I didn't want to get lost in the weeds about about Pence, but there was an interesting question. D says, so when the people were filling in the bubble, were they filling it in for Pence? And that makes it interesting. I think what she means to say is, if there's two separate elections, then why would it be Trump and Pence on the ballot as opposed to just Trump and then Pence?
Well, they are separately. If I remember properly, there's one for Trump, there's one for Pence, but there's no other Republican for vice president. Well, that's because he's when it comes to primaries and all that.
I'm going to look that up because I
Yeah.
actually
I don't remember them. It was separate. I don't believe it said Trump and Pence. There was a bubble for Trump. There was a bubble for Pence. I don't remember there being a Trump and Pence. If it was, then that's not the way it's supposed to be on the ballot. Of course, then again, the people aren't supposed to be voting for it in the first place anyway.
right.
So we're talking about whether or not an illegal ballot is legal from an illegal standpoint, and But
That's a whole-
while you're searching,
Yeah, I'm going to find this because I took a picture of my ballot. When I
did
was in-
you?
I took a picture of my ballot when I was in the voting, when I was in the ballot, when I was in the booth. Yeah.
Hmm.
I want to find it. Go ahead and talk.
So I'm going to continue reading. So it says, the person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be president if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. And if no person have such majority, then from the persons having the highest numbers, not exceeding 3 on the list, of those voted for as president, the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president. But in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. So in other words, if nobody gets to 270, there's no majority, then it goes to the House, and then they will vote on it by state. So every state gets 1 vote, no matter how many representatives they have.
I don't know if you can see this.
No, I can't. Is it separate, or
It's Trump/Pence was one thing, and
it's not
Biden.
supposed to be that way?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be 2 separate elections. So that's bad balance. Of course, then again, the people aren't supposed to be voting for them either. The electors are supposed to vote for them in separate elections. The electors,
I'm just telling you,
president, the electors
when I-
vote for vice president. Well, but are we surprised that they're doing it wrong?
No, not at all.
Yeah, there shouldn't have been. Should be 2 separate elections. All right. And hypothetically, like I said too, as the electors, there's nothing constitutional requires electors to follow how the people voted, because the people aren't supposed to be voting in the first place. So the electors can vote any way they want. If the people, let's say, had voted for Biden, and the electors all went to vote, and they say, you know what, we know this is BS, I'm going to vote for Trump. They could have done that
Well,
also.
many people fail to remember that when Trump won the election in 2016, that was when all of the people were, or the left was appealing to the electors not to vote the
Right.
way the people voted.
Right.
Now, and I
Yeah,
remember
so
that.
they were even admitting that the
I remember that
electors
very,
could
very
vote
vividly.
differently than the people.
I remember that very vividly. But one of the main things that we have to realize here, guys, is that we are not supposed to, technically, we are not supposed to vote for the president. That's not our job. Our job is to vote for our representative. That's really the only say that we have in this process, is our vote is for our representative at the federal government, which is why in the legislative branch, the House of Representatives has all the power. The constituency of the House of Representatives is us, the people. The constituency of the Senate is the states. And the president is not supposed to be involved in the legislative process. He's just supposed to be an overseer. And I'm talking
the way
about
I explained it today in Fallbrook. People's voice, House; states voice, Senate; federal government's voice, president.
Right,
But when it comes to legislation, his role is simply yes or no.
right.
The actual legislative process belongs to the people in the states from the original point of view.
Yeah, and again, I'm speaking from an original constitutional perspective. Now,
Right.
I'm not talking about what it's morphed
And then
into.
the first question out of people's mouths is, well, then how is it they can do this? Because they do.
Right, because they
Because
do.
usurpers usurp, criminals act criminally, and tyrants act tyrannically. How do we change it? It starts locally.
Right.
Complain about the cockroaches in Washington, quit breeding them locally.
Which is expressly why, and I want to address this. We're kind of out of time, but
Yeah.
this when Flynn talks about there's nobody coming to save us, my humble opinion, the analogy that I like to use is I do believe the military is probably going to come in and do something at some point, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to get we the people to get up and fight for ourselves at the local level, specifically at the local level. And that's why they're coming out and saying that there's nobody going to save us. And the analogy that I like to use is like, if you are a parent and you've got your 12-year-old son dealing with a bully out in a kid who's bullying him out on the street, you want your 12-year-old son to fight that battle, to teach him how to fight for himself. You want him to stand up to the bully. Now, if the bully pulls out a shotgun, then at that point, the parent is going to go out there and say, that ain't going to happen. He's going to pull out his gun and something's going to happen. But the parent is going to intervene on behalf of the child, on behalf of the 12-year-old, because the 12-year-old can't fight that fight fairly. No. So
But otherwise, they need to stand up and learn to stand up, learn to.
And so is the military going to come in and help us? I believe they are, but they're not going to come in and fight our local battles. They want us to be able to stand on our own and fight our battles now. So that's the analogy.
And you and I've had this discussion. I'm not so sure the military is going to step up in that way, but that regardless, that said, the other analogy is your rights. Who do you possess your rights? Why do you keep asking for a piece of paper or a government to fight for your rights for you? They're your rights.
That's right.
They belong to you. You're supposed to fight for them. So look in the mirror, grow a pair. Let me put it this way, and I'm not saying this about any of you out there, because you guys I know are on the right side, but this is a general question, a statement out there. And obviously it's kind of an allegorical, rhetorical kind of thing to say, but I'm amazed that so many Americans are able to walk upright with spines made of jelly.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
You got to fight for it. All right. We'll finish the amendment 12.
As one person said, we also have a right not to have poison injected into us.
That's true. Well, and in that case, that goes back to the 14th Amendment. You have a right to life, liberty, and property. And if they cannot violate those rights without due process. So the question here is a virus due process?
Nope.
Then they can't mess with your liberty, your free choice. They have no right to make laws against your free choice.
Now, and I want to say something as well, because a lot of people don't really understand what's happening conceptually here. But conceptually, what they're doing is instead of using a central planning model where the Constitution is being eroded, what's happening is that we are having corporations do the legislating for us. Corporations are the ones that are trying to say, you have to get this, you have to get the jab. Corporations are the ones saying, if you don't get this, we're not going to serve you. Corporations are the ones that are enforcing a lot of these things. So from a corporation does not have to abide by the Constitution. They are their own private company.
All right. Well, now that said, that's why we need corporations willing to say, by the way, we're not going to abide by that. We're doing it differently. Come buy my products.
Right, 100%. But if you guys really want to go down a rabbit hole, look at all the corporations, and it's especially why Team 17 was said monitor the resignations. That's exactly why they did that, because the corporate structure was the one that was really the one that was working behind the scenes at eroding our rights. But anyway,
okay, we'll finish the 12th Amendment next week. I gotta get out the door. We're gonna finish the 12th Amendment next week. Then we'll go into the 13th, 14th, and 15th. Important stuff, 14th Amendment especially. There's stuff in there that really applies to today too that you'll want to hear. I will say this real quick. Two interesting things. Number one, if my cousin Kathy is watching, hi Kathy, Kathy sent me an email saying, hey, I saw you on Scott McKay. You have the right name. You kind of look like somebody. Are you my Uncle Bud's son? Yes, I am. My cousin Kathy and I, aside from a funeral when I was 21, haven't really seen each other since we were little kids. And she found out about me on this.
Wow, that's awesome story.
Isn't that crazy? That's
An
awesome.
story.
Yeah. So and she says, well, really, I'm a Sasha Stone fan, but that's how I came to know Scott McKay. And I'm like, okay, Scott will take that, I'm sure.
That's awesome.
The other thing is, I have a class in South Orange County, and it moved from a restaurant in San Juan Capistrano to one in Dana Point because someone was very upset about a particular F. Biden shirt that was being worn. The fact that we were talking about the Constitution of freedom and God in public and was offended by our Pledge of Allegiance. So we went to this new restaurant in Dana Point, at which time a libtard who's a longtime patron was offended by the fact that we did the Pledge of Allegiance in a public space. We are now at a pizza place today, back in San Juan Capistrano.
So much for the ocean view.
Yeah. What is wrong with these people? Oh, well, you say under God in the pledge, and it's so offensive. Oh my God.
Look
Really?
up, look. Okay, so look up Repressive Tolerance, the essay Repressive Tolerance by Herbert Marcuse. That'll be homework if you really want to dig into that. Actually,
All right, very good.
I'm reading right now. I'm reading the Levin's new book about American Marxism. That's fantastic.
I need to get it.
I cannot recommend it more highly. So
Okay,
anyway,
what was
on
the
that
first
note,
one? And what was the first one you said?
what's that?
And what was the other one you said?
Well, the other one was Herbert Marcuse, who was a communist. He was he wrote an essay called Repressive Tolerance, and essentially it said you're only tolerant to your ideas. You're vehemently intolerant to other ideas. But I've known about that for a long time. But Levin is actually in the chapter that I'm in right now. He goes into that repressive
very
tolerance
good.
by Marcuse. So.
And I'm still working on my number 8 and 9 books. So once they're ready to roll, I'll let you guys know.
Yeah.
Because I want you to buy them.
We're gonna let Doug go because he's
Yeah.
got a long drive on a
Yeah,
narrow
but
road.
hey, let me say this real quick. I love all of you. Thanks for watching. You guys are awesome. My biggest audience of all my classes is right here. Scott McKay's Patriot Street Fighter with Ron, and yours truly is Mr. Constitution. And if it wasn't for you guys, man, there's a lot of stuff I wouldn't be able to do. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you for watching. For those of you who are going, hey, Doug, I sent you an email. I'm about 2.5 weeks behind still. I'm catching up. So I apologize if you've not heard back. I will answer all your emails and keep them coming. I'm good with them. And if you want to buy books, look me up, DouglasVGibbs.com. Hit the books link. All 7 of my existing books are there. It's okay if you buy them through Amazon. Amazon only gets a small amount. I get most of the money. I'm working on having my own store someday in the future, but I wanted to say one more time, I absolutely love my Patriot Street Fighter audience. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you.
By the way, Patriot Street Fighters, we're going to be having a big sale on merch for Labor Weekend, so be looking for that.
And by the way, that Huntington Beach class that those of you heard about, it's going to be next week on Labor Day. Looks like we're still going to hold it. I don't celebrate Labor Day. That's a Marxist holiday. I'd rather get rid of Labor Day and replace it with Constitution Day on September 17th.
Hey, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. All right, guys, we're going to let Doug go.
All right,
Thank you, sir. See you next week.